Let's talk about awakening. Now we have covered this topic many times in the past, but there's always a confusion around this concept. And I repeat again that awakening is just a concept. Somehow we have this idea that awakening is going to make us better, it's going to make us peaceful, calmer. It's just going to take away all the negative emotions and keep us in a state of perpetual bliss. And that it happens instantaneously. The moment awakening happens, we are free from all of that, which I believe is a misunderstanding of the concept. You see, this personality, how has it come about? It has come about through your interaction with the external world. So it is an accumulation. You acquired knowledge from your parents, your relatives, your friends, during your schooling, college days, work environment, the society in which you lived, the culture in which you lived, the country in which you were born, and also the organizations that you interacted with. They all shaped this understanding and created these structures that you call as my structures. This is what me is. I am so and so. I am a doctor, I am a lawyer, I am a good father, I am a good son, I am a good daughter, I am a good wife. I'm a humanitarian, I'm an empath, I'm a healer, I'm a spiritual person, or I'm a material person. Whatever idea you may have about yourself is an accumulation. It never was your innate understanding that these things were already there. They came about through interactions. So, what happens in awakening is that there is a crack in the structure of this personality, all of this accumulation that is built up. So, when there is a crack in personality, of course, it is going to hurt. When your whole ideology, your beliefs, your ideas about right and wrong, entire thing that makes up this me gets broken, when it doesn't remain as solid as it used to be, there is a part of you that feels afraid because it feels like death. And what feels like death is this me, which is a false image. And it cannot bear to see that the structures are falling apart. So it tries to reason, use intellect to come up with clever arguments. But what if I'm wrong? But what if I'm not following the right path, the right teacher, the right spiritual practices? So you see, it tries to cling on to concepts here and there in order to feel whole, in order to feel expansive. And what it is afraid of is its death. So it tries to convince you that the me tries to convince itself that it requires itself in order to live in this world. This is what I am. That's what it says. And there's nothing beyond this whole facade, this personality. But somewhere there is this awareness that this me is not the reality. Now, this is not an intellectual understanding. It is not an understanding induced through affirmations or through repeatedly chanting, I am this, I am that, or I am Brahman, or I am consciousness. It is a knowing in the being. It does not rely on time. So, whatever happens in your life situations, whatever ups and downs you go through, you always know that you will return to the baseline. And that baseline is your most natural and neutral state. That baseline is always accessible very easily without effort. All that needs to be done, quote unquote done, is to simply be here and now. Now, if you're asking how to be here and now, then as J. Krishnamurti said, that you're not listening. If you're asking how to be in your most natural state, then you don't want to be in your most natural state because you're identified with the false self, and that false self has convinced you, do not leave me, otherwise you'll die. But if it is the will of the awareness, and you go through the courage of the death of the false self, you will experience a vastness, an expansiveness, an infinitude that cannot be described in words, that cannot be given as a concept, that can only be experienced as deep, deep silence. Not the silence of the mind, which is forcefully induced, but the silence which is your baseline, which is your most natural state. So, what happens in this? The organism is not much bothered of how it used to be and what it will become in the future. The organism accepts, this is who I am, with all my flaws, with all my shortcomings, with thinking happening obsessively, or there are some patterns which are not very helpful to me, but there is still this me with all its structures, with all its flaws, with all its, problems, quote unquote problems. But they are not problems anymore after awakening. So you see, it is not the person that awakens. Because if a person says that I am awakened, then that is this me, this false image me, trying to convince itself that it has gained something, accumulated something. That would just be a thought, another accumulation. I am this, I am that, now I am also awakened. So the concept is that awakening happens not through your efforts. It just happens. For how, why, where, it's not in our control, but it happens. Where this whole facade begins to crack down. The whole structure, which is the personality, begins to break down. So what happens is that the mind becomes introverted. It just inverts to itself. So whatever happens externally, it does not get involved in whatever is happening on the outside. So if people tell you that, that you need to have certain attributes, if you're saying that you're awakened or enlightened, And if you measure yourself, your spiritual progress using that measure, you will always be disappointed. Awakening through the crack in the structure of the personality has shown you the nature of the organism. That the organism is a certain way. Now, certain changes may come about in the organism because that's its nature. The personality keeps on changing. Today you like something. Let's say today you like painting or dancing or any other art form. Tomorrow you may change to something else. Today you like one specific type of food. Tomorrow you may like another cuisine. So the nature of organism is change. It keeps on changing, learning, acquiring. All that happens with the organism. That is a part of daily living. But what is seen is that the awareness that witnesses the change remains unaffected by what the organism does. So, your concern with your psychological states being in a certain way, when you say that I used to feel jealousy, anger, and after awakening, I don't want to feel anger anymore. But if you look at sages, if you look at people who have given the greatest teachings and concepts, you will see that anger has been a part of their personality. Now, yes, the anger may not be very impulsive, but it does happen in the organism. Organism is designed like that it will experience all the emotions. The only difference now is that the central agency or me, which claims to be in charge of these structures, I am this, I am that, I need to be this, I need to be that, is now a weakened entity. It's not solid anymore. So, whatever emotion or feeling or sensation or thought arises momentarily does not get carried in horizontal time as suffering. That is the only difference. So life becomes simply a series of witnessing. Anger arises is witnessed. Jealousy arises is witnessed. And whatever is witnessed is simply released. Released where? Released into the same awareness from where it came. But there is no clinging to anything as I am angry, I am jealous, I need to not be angry, and I need to not be jealous. So you see, all this burden of self-improvement or self-enhancement just falls apart in awakening. Because there is no concrete solid self to modify. So whatever gaps you think you may have in the self, which you believe that awakening is just going to fill those gaps in the self and create a perfect, picture perfect image, that's just a projection. That's your projection on what is. Because this is the thing with me, it never feels completely satisfied, fulfilled. It always feels incomplete. That is the nature of me. So it projects a future fantasy. It says that once I have these things, these holes filled up, I will be perfect. So my anger issues, my addiction issues, my problems, my substance issues, whatever may be happening in a given moment. Once all that is solved, I will be this perfect human being living perfectly in the society as a well-adjusted person. But you see, there is a debilitating and haunting emptiness that one faces when one is identified with this false self. No matter how much this me tries to modify itself by accumulation, through understanding, through analysis, through deep study, it still remains the incomplete entity. So, identification with something incomplete is going to cause feelings of emptiness. So, awakening always brings you back to that baseline place which feels safe, secure, which is most intimate to you. That place of safety is never lost. And that can be tapped into anytime, any place. It does not require effort. On the contrary, when you're identified with the false self, the me, that is when you actually put effort. And we get so conditioned to putting effort, to fixing ourselves, that we forget to see that how easy and how simple it is to just be. Just be in our most natural state. No modifications needed. So, in that space of being, the presence that one exudes not only bring calms to oneself but also brings calm to others. Because from that place of beingness, there is no anxiousness, there is no clinging to act impulsively. All that is gone. Now, sometimes it may happen as a result of the biological organism experiencing certain stimulus, but it happens momentarily. It does not continue as a dialogue in horizontal time that I'm unwhole, I'm imperfect, and I need to fix myself to be well adjusted to society. And you see, societies also keep changing from time to time. So, who are we trying to adjust to? What are we trying to adjust with? We're using me to become something else, which is also me. So, what awakening does is that it brings you back to this me. Instead of you moving outwards and waiting for the world to become loving, compassionate, all caring, more empathic, you just come back to this me. Where does these ideas of empathy, compassion, kindness, gentleness, where do they live? They live inside me. So it comes back to me. But when we are concerned with the world, when we are waiting for the world to become kinder, become better, we are living in a fantasy world. Because world has always been like this. Ramana Maharishi said that you're trying to change the world is like covering the whole earth with leather to avoid the pain of walking barefoot. It's much simpler to wear shoes. So rather than waiting for the world to become better, kinder, investigate who has those ideas. You see, awakening does not make you empathic all of a sudden. Some people who use this word empath or empathic, it is again a function. So it is going to come up and it is going to go away. You can't be in empathy all the time. There will be times when you feel empathic, there will be times when you won't feel empathic. Now, people who are identified with the false self, that deficit becomes huge, so they rarely feel empathic. And that creates trouble. trouble for them. And they believe that they cannot deviate from that false self, otherwise, they will die. And it is the false self only which is telling them that. So they continue these maladaptive behaviors: defensiveness, poking, attacking, psychological manipulation. All those things happen. So they're waiting for awakening to do the magic. They think it's like a fairy tale where you just go and take a dip into the holy river and you come out all clean. Awakening just puts a crack into that false self, and it is painful, very painful. And once the crack happens, it's just going to widen until everything dissolves in light and becomes light. And that is simply the baseline that I'm talking about. The baseline of your most natural state, which is your being. So anything that arises from the being is whole and complete, doesn't need fixing. It stays present to what is, as the witness, unaffected, non-analytical, non-judgmental. The moment judgment comes into picture, it is the false self with the subject-object split that has already emerged. And it happens. After awakening, the false self does try to rear its head every now and then until it begins to subside more and more and more until it dissolves, which is the deliverance. So the biological organism, with its choices, preferences, with all that structure, still remains even after awakening. But now there's no concreteness to it. Even if the ideas are rejected, it doesn't feel as if something is being attacked. It feels light. It feels easy. There is still that sense of interconnectedness which runs in the background even as one interacts with another. That recognition of beingness remains there as it is. It is seen that behind appearances is one energy, one consciousness, one field that is powering all these I's or me's. So, who can keep resentment? With whom? Who can keep hate, grudges, spite, ill will towards whom? So all these functions of horizontal time which create suffering, they begin to dissolve. Momentary anger, momentary jealousy, pain may still arise, but it is not continued in horizontal time as suffering. So awakening does not make the organism into a better organism. It simply reveals the true nature of the organism and always brings us to that baseline peace, that beingness, which is the source and substance of everything, which is the substratum of all awareness.